She built a team that looked great on paper: strong numbers, new leadership, a fresh space. But something was quietly slipping away, and she almost missed it. Today's guest has a confession about what happens when growth gets ahead of connection. Stay tuned for another great episode of Bad Boss Confessional. Hi, I'm Beth Fahey, and welcome to Bad Boss Confessional. I've been a leader for over 30 years, and honestly, I've made plenty of mistakes along the way. The truth is, those mistakes taught me more about leadership than any success ever could. This podcast is where we get real about the moments we'd rather forget and find out why they're the ones actually worth remembering. Each week, I chat with leaders who aren't afraid to share their worst boss moments and what they learned from them. Because here's what I know: every great leader has a story they're not proud of. This is the place to tell those stories. Before we dive into today's confession, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsors who make this show possible. Do you love running on EOS? Try Streti, the EOS platform people love. Native integrations and extra features help you manage people, projects, process, and engagement. Connected to your favorite EOS tools and all in one place. You love EOS. It's time to love the platform you're running it on. Try Streti free at streti.com. That's STRETY.com. Streti, the EOS platform people love. Let's be honest, hiring the right people is hard. That's why I love Titus Talent Strategies. Their whole person hiring approach helps you find and keep A players who align with your values, and they back it with an industry-leading guarantee. Best part? Titus Talent Strategies is included in the entrepreneurial toolkit for companies running on EOS. Check them out at titustalent.com/EOS. Today, I'm joined by someone whose entire life's work is built around the idea that performance and connection aren't separate things. They fuel each other. Jule Salem is the founder and managing director of Salem Solutions, where she builds high-performing, connection-driven contact center teams for both government and commercial clients. She also hosts the podcast Dialing In, where she helps leaders turn human connection into measurable performance strategy. Jule has spent her career proving that the teams who stay engaged, aligned, and connected over the long haul aren't just lucky, they're intentional. Jule, welcome to Bad Boss Confessional.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you, Beth.
So I would love to learn more about your business. Can you explain to me what you do exactly?
Well, I wouldn't say it's glamorous, but it's very much needed. So, really, in a nutshell, we focus on the people power for contact centers across the country. Salem Solution predominantly focuses on supporting federal government programs. So those typically require, very high volume, quick turn headcounts. So it's not unusual for us to be getting requests of 250 people plus at a time, needing to be turned around within, 2, maybe 3 weeks at the max. And so that really just has become our niche over the past many years. And tied in with that, obviously, we always, want to meet and exceed, all of our clients' goals. But, starting out and supporting contact centers, one of my continued passions is really being able to truly support the success of the agents that we're helping place. Let's face it, we don't get most of us don't get excited about having to call into a contact center, and so we really try to help support and the agents that work through Salem to make sure that they're meeting with success and just getting what they need to be able to do what they do day in and day out.
That's great. I'm sure that service is widely appreciated for those agencies. I just spent probably an hour on the phone with somebody from a local tax agency, and I have to say the experience wasn't awesome. And so it's great that you're helping foster awesome experiences and connection.
Thank you. That's the goal. Yeah, and
Yeah.
what you just shared, not unusual, we've all been there having to call in and have a less than favorable, hopefully none of our agents, hopefully from none of our agents, but having a less than favorable, encounter with having to call into a call center.
Yeah. So have you always done this as your line of work, or have you done anything previously?
So I haven't. I always joke and say, I feel like most people I meet don't set out to get into staffing. You kind of fall into it. And that was certainly my own experience. My background is accounting and finance. And so the early part of my career, was kind of more in the corporate world on, doing financial analysis and accounting. And in my mid 20s, actually had started my own accounting firm for small businesses. And then ended up working for my now husband, who had a portfolio of businesses and serving as CFO for those entities. And I always say, when you're in small business, you'll often take whatever opportunity you can get. And so we had a client that, came to us and said, "Hey, we've got this call center staffing need. Is that something you think you can help us with?" And so at the time, I thought, well, how hard could it be? It was myself and our HR manager at the time, and through no fault of her own, she had to go on unexpected leave. And the client calls me and is like, "Hey, Jule, we need 200 agents like ASAP." And so I just grew to love the challenge of being able to find a lot of people well qualified, to be able, like I said, to support these mission critical needs. And so that really was how Salem Solutions came to fruition and have been doing it ever since.
And so how many years have you been doing this?
Goodness, we're at like 15 plus now.
Oh, well, you must have it down at this point.
Well, always a work in progress, right? Can
Yeah.
always be doing things better.
I just had to laugh when you said the sentence, "How hard can it be?" I wonder how many businesses have started with that sentence. I said the exact same sentence when I started my bakery business. I'm like, "How hard can it be?" It's just like, I make cookies and cakes already. I mean, come on. So,
Might as
that's
well
so
do it
funny.
and get paid for it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, well, you came here with a confession in mind, Jewel. So I'm just curious what that is, and if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us so that our listeners can hopefully grow through your experience.
Sure. And I know and appreciate, the title of your podcast being Bad Boss Confessional. I'd like to think I'm not a quote unquote bad boss. I know I've had a couple of those during my career. So, but no, my story is really, um, it happened early last year. I don't think I appreciated really how important I thought it was something I guess everyone did. Connecting with your team, really getting to know your team. I like getting to know people, even if I joke and say, even if I'm going through the Publix check, which is our local grocery store checkout line, getting to know them, asking them how their day is, what they're doing over the weekend. And so, early last year, I was having this convergence of, for the first time, had brought in a new leader to the Salem team, and so we were transitioning from, where a lot of, our managers had reported to me directly, and as the company had grown organically. So I had that one-on-one relationship with so many people on our team where we were in the thick of it together, on the day to day. And so we had that transition of bringing on a new leader. We also were moving office spaces. We hadn't done that, since the start of Salem. Um, so those are big ones, in their own right. And then, personally was navigating, as I mentioned, I had supported my husband's businesses for a number of years. So Jule to Salem had, continued to serve as CFO for one of his companies, and early last year it had been acquired. So, that was a big transition for me. And then at the same time, my husband was navigating some unexpected health issues that had come up. So you've got, kind of all these things at the same time. And those more personal ones that I mentioned, with my husband's health and going through the transition of him selling his business. I think at the time I thought, well, as a leader, I just need to navigate those personal outside of the business things on my own. I don't need to talk to my team about that. I don't want to burden them with this while, we're going through this move and getting, a new leader up to speed. Um, and so I think, all these things together, even though on paper we were starting out with what was poised to be and ended up being the best year to date for Salem. We had just onboarded, a new project. Like, we were hitting all the metrics. Things are looking good. We had just moved to what I thought was this great new office space. Like, everyone should be happy, right? Like,
Mhm, mhm,
but I started noticing what I call kind of these moments of disconnection.
mm,
People being quiet in meetings, or just these little things of, maybe someone that had been more committed to staying those few extra minutes later to get something done was, hopping out a little early now. And so just these small things that I started to observe.
mm,
And I think initially I was like, "Oh, maybe it's just me," because admittedly, I think I was feeling a little disconnected with myself, with all the things that I was trying to navigate. And so, really it kind of came to this head, this moment of me approaching the team and, really having to face the reality of like, "Hey guys, like what's going on?" Right? And like why are people not seeming as engaged, and kind of facing the elephant in the room, if you will. And it really brought me to this realization that whether it was because I was becoming or going through a period of disconnection with myself, and then that was leading to disconnection with the team as a whole. And so through that, just really coming to the realization of, something that I had really been diligent and intentional about fostering and maintaining all these years, I was losing sight of. And realize that, what we see as these, even sometimes like really small moments of disconnect, are the early signs of what can eventually lead to performance disruptions. And so I guess I would consider that my quote unquote, bad boss moment. And so I'd say that my biggest takeaways from that are, especially as I look to scale my business, where realizing I'm not going to be able to have direct contact with everyone on our team day to day. So, how can we put things in place to make sure that we're fostering connection at scale, right?
mm,
So working on building out frameworks, so that we're all wearing that hat and fostering it together,
mm.
um, with the goal of ultimately leading to continued and greater performance.
So I'm just curious how you did that, fostered connection at scale.
Well, it's very much still a work in progress, but working on developing frameworks. Even I don't think I appreciated at the time, but how I conduct my one-on-ones with staff. Yes, do we all have to be held accountable and deliver on what's expected within our individual roles? But even something as small as, towards the end of my one-on-ones, I typically will always ask, like, "Well, what's going on with you?" How are things going? Whether that means, inside their role or outside of work, right? The reality is we're all dealing with different things at different times.
Mhm.
And, to the extent people are willing to share, it's not like we're having this, okay, I'm going to share all my deep, dark, drama
Mhm.
of what's going on. But I just find that it provides that opportunity to get insight into, how people on your team are really doing. Whether it's, they're navigating something with their child at home, or like in my own case, having to juggle a family member or spouse that's needing extra care. Or maybe it is something in their role. Hey, I've got to give this presentation, and this is where I feel like I'm really struggling. Just to be able to provide those opportunities for open dialogue for us
Mhm.
as leaders to learn how we can better support the individuals on our team.
I mean, we talk about this in the Great Boss workshops quite a bit, is just connecting to your direct reports as a human. Like, really
Mhm.
thinking about the fact that they have a life outside of work, that, they have problems with their kids getting their homework done. They might have a estranged relationship with one of their parents or a sibling, or there might be health issues or other things going on. And I think that what happens with a lot of folks is there's a lot of fear around asking personal questions of people, because it feels like you're crossing this, like, danger, danger, Will Robinson, don't go in. This is like the land that HR is, constantly warns you about, is like, don't ask personal questions. And so,
Isn't that so silly though? I don't know.
yeah.
To me, it's like, we all talk about, we spend often more time with who we work with than, our own families. And so, I know from my own experience, those times where we're all having to work really hard together, right? Maybe we've got to put in some longer days. It's so much more rewarding when you're doing it with people you really know, and you're doing it collectively to serve something greater.
Right.
So, to your point, like, we are all human, and we all deal with different things. So again, it's not like we got to be like, I don't know. Like I said, some deep dark secret, or
Yeah.
crossing the line of what would be too personal. But
Mhm.
something as simple as, hey, are you doing anything fun this weekend? Is just an easy way of, maybe they share something that they really enjoy doing outside of work. And so I feel like as leaders, it's important for us to remember those things and then bring them up. Hey, John, have you had a chance to go, I don't know, pickleball, or,
Right.
whatever, their activity of choices. Because I know I've found, especially being able to identify what gets people excited, right?
Mhm.
Whether that's in their work. So I know a common question that I ask is, hey, of your job, what is the part that you enjoy the most, right? That if you could do more of that, you would get
Mm.
excited about. We've all got those aspects that, I know you being familiar with EOS, right? We talk about, there's the ones that you're good at, but maybe you don't really want to be doing, or the ones you can kind of muster through. And so, really being able to hone in on, what people enjoy and what they're best suited in doing.
This is absolutely what managers should be doing, is finding out, have you done your delegate and elevate? Like, what do you really love to do? What do you like to do? And assessing that person's unique ability. And you might discover that there are things that they're really interested in and like to do or love to do that you didn't know about. And maybe they would be better served by moving to a different seat on the accountability chart, or, maybe they would be better served by delegating something like managing the CRM to somebody else that might learn better at that. And I think we're often so afraid of asking these questions, because then it might mean that we're inviting them to another job or that we're saying that they're not doing well where they're at. And when they understand that the real motivation for us is for them to feel really energized and, engaged in their seat, and they trust that, I think that that's when you can open up all kinds of doors for people. But you've got to have those conversations, and we can't be afraid to have those conversations, right?
I know other leaders I've spoken to, it's like, well, what if I ask if they're interested in this and then they say yes and then they don't want to do what I currently need them to do? And so I I think it's setting those expectations, when you ask the question of, "Hey, I'm interested in learning more about what you would like to learn more about." And it doesn't mean it's gonna be a all in tomorrow
Mhm.
thing, but how can we take steps to get you more exposure to that? And who knows, based on business needs that, longer term could turn into its own thing. Because I know for myself, without setting that expectation, then a couple weeks later they're like, okay, great, so when can I do that full time? And you're like, hey, that we're not quite there yet, but taking those baby steps to help get them to where they want to be while ensuring that it's aligning with the business needs.
Right, and when you're really listening to what they're saying and what their desires are, that conveys care, or dare I say, love for your
Even just
fellow.
interest, like,
Yeah,
"Oh, my boss is interested in learning more
exactly.
more about me and what I really wanna be doing," and that's so important.
It is so important, and it really does help to build cultures, the cultures that you want. Now, I wanna go back a little bit to something that you talked about, and I think that it sounds like you are naturally striking a really great balance of being personally interested in people, asking great questions that help you connect with them and build trust. There's also the danger of getting too much information, and I've worked at places where this has happened, right? Where bosses get a little too close to their direct reports, they become friends, and then it becomes really difficult to then manage that person because now you're so close with that person that it's like we've really blurred the lines between a boss and a direct report. So I'm just curious if you've also experienced that or seen that in action, and how do you coach your managers now when when they might be experiencing that? Because I find that this often happens when people have been promoted from a peer group.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone about that the other day, that is and I've been there, it's a hard transition,
Mhm.
um, going from peers to, then being someone's direct boss or manager.
Mhm.
Those can definitely be hard transitions to navigate. Um, I would say, within my own organization, definitely try to, to the extent we can, prepare the individual for that upfront as much as possible. I think often it's glamorized, oh, yes, being a boss, being a manager. Um, but there's a lot of other things that come with it that people don't always recognize or appreciate. Kind of related to this, I used to always joke with one of our HR managers because she worked out of a different office, and she would call me on like a Friday at lunchtime and be like, yeah, Jule, everybody just walked out to go to lunch and I didn't get the invite. And I was like, yep, I didn't either. So it's, appreciating that um, with roles, there are certain boundaries that have to be maintained. And, it's, transparently, it's certainly bitten me in the butt before. Because the reality is, like I was mentioning earlier, um, my goal for people that we bring into our organization is people that I like working with and that we all like working with together. And so there is that tendency to be like, oh man, Judy, she really likes horseback riding too. We should, go do something outside of work. But that can certainly blur those lines. And so I think um, helping encourage people that, yes, you want to have cordial, personable, friendly relationships at work, um, but not going over that line to where it becomes, I guess, for lack of a better word, more of a personal relationship, so that you can manage those boundaries that come with the position.
Yeah, absolutely. And like discovering what that golden zone is
Hmm.
where you're relatable, you care, you're connected, and you can still lead and manage that person and it's accepted.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm curious, real quick, is that something that you've ever had to navigate?
I have, and I also had it in so I had a bakery business and we had a lot of primarily young women as employees. And we were all fairly close in age. And I saw this in particular when we had identified somebody on the production team that was a superstar, just really hard worker, didn't necessarily have the EQ skills yet, but through coaching we knew could get there. And we probably put her in the seat a little too early because we needed it, right? And that's how most people move is like you're like, "Well, we're kinda desperate here. We need somebody to fill this seat. You look like the best candidate. You know the systems that we have inside and out." And we put her in that role. And I remember she came to work about a month after she'd been put into the position of managing her friends, essentially. And she said, "I went to Bunko and nobody wanted to talk to me."
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to not take that personal.
And I just my heart broke for her because I think we've all lived that and had that situation, and I mean, like, I feel that every company should have almost a tutorial on how to do that, like, how to make that leap, how to make that transition, because it happens so frequently, and it's so hard for the folks that are going through it, and we kinda just, you know, drop them in the deep end of the pool and say, "Well, you'll be okay. You'll get through this." And, give them a good clap on the back and say, "Toughen up. It'll be okay." And I just think that, like, we should talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I had another experience where, I in a prior company, I had a very close working relationship with a peer. And, let's face it, sometimes camaraderie in the workplace is built around talking about your boss or, oh gosh, the company made this decision. Why did they do that? They should have consulted with us. No. And so someone that was like really skilled in their area of expertise. And then later in my career, was hiring for my own team and was like, oh, this person would be great. And ended up bringing them on. And it was such a different dynamic because now I was the boss to talk about. so, um, so yeah. So to your point, I definitely think it's something that we as leaders or organizations need to be equipping people better and providing them tools, so that really, they're not blindsided when they step into it.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I think this is a very interesting topic. I'd like to learn a little bit about your podcast, though, if you wouldn't mind spending just a minute or two talking about that.
Sure. Well, actually, it ties into my bad boss story that I shared earlier, and so as I was mentioning, that experience, really led me to this epiphany, if you will, and curiosity in wanting to learn more about other stories of as leaders moments of disconnection in the workplace. And so that really like brought dialing into fruition. So selfishly, it gives me an opportunity to connect with other leaders and learn about their own experiences and then what steps they took to get either themselves, their team, or the mission that they're serving back into alignment. So yeah, ultimately the podcast has guests on. We release new episodes every other week, and we start out with sharing, what their greatest moment of disconnection was, and then, like I said, kind of the practical and actionable tools that they use to navigate getting through that.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like we have kindred
Yes,
podcasts here.
yes,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that that's the ticket, right? Is just admitting where, hey, this isn't going well. How do I learn from this? Because we learn the best from our mistakes, don't we?
yes, yep. As much as the successes and wins are great. It's like I said, those moments of disconnect or failure where we learn the most. And, to your point, and really, I would imagine the purpose and intent behind this podcast is being able to highlight that because, going back to my own experience, I really I didn't feel like I had necessarily other leaders to talk it through with
Mhm.
because we do, tend to share the highlight reel
Yes.
and not always those more challenging moments that the reality is we're all navigating. And especially as it relates to human connection, particularly in the workplace, it's not going to be perfect all the time. So, right, you don't get connection and then it stays there forever. There's always going to be those blips along the way. And so, really, my mission is okay, what tools can we put in place so that we can better navigate those to get realignment and reconnection faster with one another?
That's such a great point. Sustaining great cultures takes as much work as building them.
Yes, and is often the harder part.
Exactly. Because once you've arrived, you think, I'm good. I'm like, we can coast now.
Right.
Sort of like when EOS is fully rolled out into an organization, people are like, "We're good now." And they don't realize that the work there's work and work, which means that you have to continually work at making sure that it's rolled out. And so to your point, like ensuring that you have these tools built in for connection throughout your organization. I mean, there's nothing really more important, I don't think.
I'm right there with you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what gets me most excited about, growing my business and like I mentioned, having to roll up your sleeves and get the hard work done is doing it with a connected, collaborative team.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise,
What are we
why do
doing?
it?
Exactly.
Exactly. All right, one last question for you, Jewel, before you go. I ask all of my guests the tattoo question, which is if you were to get a tattoo on your body somewhere that reminded you either of the story that you told or maybe something that would give us a little bit more information about you personally, what would your tattoo be and where would it be located?
Oh goodness. Okay. Well, you're talking to someone that is like deathly afraid of needles, even to have to get my blood drawn every year. They have to lay me down. So this is a good one. Um, it would probably I have on my whiteboard in my office, which is kind of one of my mantras that I live by. Is um, I know a lot of people refer to it as decisions determine destiny, but mine is action determines destiny. And so I guess if I had to, if you twisted my arm, I would get that as a tattoo. And if I had to pick a location, my goodness, maybe my wrist. So it's visible as a daily reminder that it's about doing the things that are going to keep driving me forward to my goals.
Yeah. I love it. And the acronym there is ADD,
Oh,
which
see,
is
you just gave me that. That's a good one.
yeah.
So maybe I just do that. Less
Yeah, I mean,
tattooing.
be additive, right? Not subtractive. So
I
I
love
love
it.
that.
Yes.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast, Jewel. I really enjoyed our conversation and getting to learn more about your business and about you personally, and actually getting a stronger connection with you, my new friend.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks to Jule Salem for reminding us that even the most connection driven leaders can lose the thread, and that protecting your culture isn't a one time decision, it's a daily practice. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with friends who need to hear this. Thanks for listening to Bad Boss Confessional. We'll see you next week.